This is a continuation of a webinar that FFF, together with Agricord, Pan-African Farmers Organization, and Asian Farmers Organization organized 2 weeks ago. The event is also streamed on the Global Landscape Forum page. I'd like to remind that there is an interpretation available below the screen, and it's available in English, Spanish, and French. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Hiroto Mitsugi, the Assistant Director General of the Forestry Department. Please, Hiroto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tina, and it's so very nice to see you, and also welcome and greetings to all of you here. So I hope that you and your families and your communities are managed in these unprecedented times. So as Tina introduced kindly to me, and my name is Hiroto Mitsugi, and then Assistant Director General for the Forestry at FAO. Yes, I'm very much happy to be here and to see so many people around the world. And also, I very much appreciate it's very much the additional audience and which might be joining us through the maybe the outreach of the landscape facilities. And through the forest and the farm facilities and other programs here at the FAO, we are very much looking at its actual practical solutions and to support the government and the certain peoples at the local level, very much closer to the forests and farms. And then we hope and talk about today how we can learn from solutions to the best direct resources and support to build resilience to the COVID-19 in the forest and the farm produce organizations. And of course, in the work with the government and the private sectors, researchers, academics, and then civil society organizations. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, this is immediately affecting all our lives, what everybody just speak out. And the ongoing impact of climate change, also we must strengthen the ability to understand what is needed for both short-term responses and long-term recovery. Nowadays, we need to be able to adapt quickly and be prepared as changing is the new normal. As we have been checking with many of our partners in the countries and around the world, we have seen that forest and farm produce organizations of smallholders, indigenous peoples, women, and the forest communities are facing many challenges, but they are actively developing their own solutions. Importantly, many of these challenges and solutions are equally important for both COVID-19 pandemic and the climate change impact. So the picture is very much complex, and then also the impact are occurring across a range of issues: health, mobility, sustainability of landscapes and the farming systems, access to input and the materials, even physical security of women in the household and communities, to name a few. The solutions also are very much complex and varied. Some are about the building back systems and the connection which were working well but have broken down. And others are about innovative new ideas and reducing or spreading that the risk is an important areas where the resilient solutions are needed. And one important way to do this is throughout the diversifications, moving to the basket of product instead of the single commodity, moving a greater variety of seed, materials, and input, diversification from production to processing and transportation, and service provisions from farm production to landscape production. So finally, resilience means putting in place process for policy making and decision-making in the government and within forest farm producer organizations. For a new partnership and linkage with the new actors and for solid and targeted investment into the people that will find a pathway. So let's put together many opportunities and options, innovative and more equitable and more diverse and less stressful. The one that will ensure the value of good relationships, strong communities, restored landscape, and less wasteful economies. So I'm very much looking at your kind of active contribution to the discussions. And then of course, in the previous session, also quite a big impact to us, to what we have to do that. Maybe this session also guiding us, and particularly to very much looking at the people who are working in the forest and the farms. I really thank you for your participation. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirato. That was very kind of you. The next session that we have will and is based on the webinar that we had 2 weeks ago on multidimensional resilience. We'll have first Duncan McQueen from IIED and as a part of FFF co-management team, saying some words about the general understanding on the resilience. And then we have Esther Penunia, the Secretary General from the Asian Farmers Association. Please, Duncan, the floor is first yours.
Thank you very much. It's very good. I hope you can see my screen. I've been invited to talk on what multidimensional resilience means and why forest and farm producer organizations are key actors. I work for IIED and work as part of the FFF team. So multidimensional resilience, what is it? It's really the capacity of human systems to resist, often at the level of the farmer, to recover, often at the level of the organization, and reorganize at the level of society in the face of change. Now, change comes in many flavors. It's economic shocks, natural disasters like climate change, storms and fires, health disasters like COVID-19, conflicts and human errors. And so we have to be resilient. We have to both be able to predict what these hazards might be, and also to design resilience responses with the organizations in the field. So in terms of predicting, we need to understand the nature of COVID-19 or climate hazards, the exposure of rural people to them, and then assess the vulnerability and design responses. The responses can be multidimensional. They can be about changing your ecology, the species you plant, changing the things you sell in the economy, changing your infrastructure, how you're protected, changing your social structures, how you're organized and linked in. So why are forest and farm producer organizations so important? Well, it's because of their scale. They're the biggest private sector. Smallholders are the biggest private sector collectively, worth up to 1.5 trillion US dollars. They produce 70% of the world's food on only 25% of the input, so they're very efficient. And they've got multifunctional systems that support many, many people. Organization is critical because at different levels, these organizations can partner to predict health crises and environmental crises. They can look at exposure regionally and the problems, and then they can help design local resilience responses. One example of this is from Kenya, where we have a nursery self-help group. and they are becoming more resilient by diversifying the products that they sell, both in terms of the plants, but also economically, beginning to sell food, beans and poultry alongside seedlings. They're changing their physical infrastructure, installing rainwater harvesting, shading and mulching, and they're linking into other networks and groups and support partnerships. So those are the sorts of responses for resilience that apply both to things like COVID-19 and to threats like climate and so on. That's it in a nutshell, 3 minutes to do multidimensional resilience.
Thank you, Duncan. We knew that that was a challenge, but you kept it. I'd like to now give the floor to Esther from AFA. Please, Esther.
Hello, good evening to everyone from the Philippines. Thank you, Tina. I'm pleased to share with you the results of the consultations with FFPOs that was conducted last June 9, as Tina has said, participated by 78 people, and were a questionnaire that was distributed last May was answered by 74 FFPOs. And the results of this questionnaire were presented and dated during this June 9 meeting. And here are the key messages of FFPOs in terms of what is the impact, what are the responses of FFPOs, what are the challenges they face, and what are the recommendations to build resilience amidst COVID-19 and climate change. I have to first do the slideshow. I'm sorry, a moment. Why is it not doing? sorry. Okay, so first the impact. Small family farmers are on the front lines on the impacts of both COVID-19 and climate change. And the impacts can be differentiated according to age, ethnicity, and gender. But as you can see in this graph, the first three impacts of COVID and climate change are the same: decreased incomes, increased poverty, decreased food insecurity, increased deaths, displacement, and loss of livelihoods and loss of lives. Second message, FFPOs are also frontliners for solutions. 100% of the respondents had said they had implemented activities to respond to COVID-19 crisis, and 90% of the respondents has said that they are implementing climate action. And they are implementing this even while facing challenges in accessing resources like natural, technological, financial, markets, data, and information and infrastructure resources, as well as challenges in influencing policy and program agenda, processes and implementation of the government, as well as challenges in organizing and federating ourselves as larger groups and in building our institutional capacities. So the recommendations for resilience that were agreed during this consultation is basically doing multi-stakeholder partnerships on two main fronts. One is investing for a real transformation of agriculture and food systems at all levels. And what does real transformation in agriculture look like? It looks like this for the FFPOs. The recognition of multifunctional interlinkages between agriculture, forestry, food security, employment, and ecosystem services. The fast tracking of the promotion and transition to climate resilient and agroecological innovations that increases biodiversity and promotes health and well-being of the people. Promoting stronger involvement of FFPOs through their cooperatives in sustainable value chains that embrace diversity and puts FFPOs in governance processes of these chains, leaving no one behind, especially the most vulnerable, women, youth, elderly. and among partners, the recognition of FFPOs as key agents of change and transformation. And when we invest in this real transformation of agriculture, we invest with, and that includes directly financing FFPOs in their work of keeping family farming alive. In this decade of family farming, within the framework of the UN rights of peasants, because all of this work will lead to the achievement of the SDGs. So the work of the FFPOs, which needed direct financing to FFPOs, include organizing and federating, includes continuously doing farmer-led research, includes building capacities for longer-term resilience at all levels, from the organizational leadership to production systems, to processing, to marketing, to distribution, to being active citizens and being able to engage governments in influencing policies and programs, and also in knowledge management, where we hope to capture and share lessons from our failures and successes. So this multi-stakeholder partnership, which allows FFPOs, their leaders and members, to be empowered and to shape our own business and responsible citizens. So we hope that the multi-stakeholders could join us in this battle cry of farmers.
Thank you, Esther. That was powerful, and I think it's needed. We need all the different actors, as we need very diverse solutions. Now we have foreseen 3 case studies, one from Ecuador, one from Nepal, and one from Ghana. I know that we have at least Rita Irene Tunay Sigunano from Ecuador online. We also have Victoria Adongo, the Executive Director for Peasant Farmers Association in Ghana online. I suggest that we start with Rita, who is also a prefect of Napo province. Could you please show us your case study?
Buenos días, Alipunja, good morning. Qué gusto poder compartir este espacio tan importante con ustedes. Desde la provincia de Napo, Ecuador, les saludamos. Nos encontramos ubicados en la Reserva de Biosfera Sumaco, en su mayoría el 62.5%. En todo caso, hoy también queremos compartirle que debido a su enorme potencial de servicios ecosistémicos y una abundante biodiversidad de riqueza paisajística, el GAT provincial de Napo está apoyando en la gestión turística, ecológica, etcétera, y sobre todo el apoyo a los bioemprendimientos muy ligados al sistema chakra. También decirles que es un espacio productivo ubicado dentro de la finca, manejado por familias bajo un enfoque orgánico y biodiverso, que también valora el conocimiento ancestral, donde se encuentran especies maderables, frutales, etcétera, etcétera. Lo que garantiza también satisfacer las necesidades de las familias sin perjudicar los procesos ecológicos del bosque. Además de que las chagramamas son mujeres que se encuentran y se encargan del manejo en sí de la chacra, el crecimiento de las plantas, de la cosecha y sobre todo el ejemplo que enseñan a sus hijos e hijas y sobre todo a sus nietas para que estas costumbres y tradiciones vayan de generación en generación. También una de las cosas importantes, la declaratoria de la chacra quichua es considerado como un sistema sostenible que fomenta la producción, la investigación y la comercialización. Esto en Napo se realizó en el año 2017. También uno de los procesos de fomento de la chacra es que sea visible a nivel mundial, como lo estamos haciendo en este momento, y que tiene características únicas de manejo del espacio para esto nos presentamos, ¿no? Este día en este espacio muy importante como un sistema importante de patrimonio agrícola mundial, además de que también sea visible para el mundo, debe mejorar los ingresos económicos de los y las productores, así como las organizaciones también. Para ello se está trabajando en un sello de reconocimiento como es el sello Chakra, ¿sí? Para que los clientes sepan que al comprar un producto con el sello están apoyando al mantenimiento de la chacra, al mantenimiento del bosque y de las familias que dependen de cada uno de ellos. Ahí nosotros los podemos observar, ¿sí? Que también esto contiene cosmovisión indígena, manejo natural, agroecológico, varias cosas. Además, también el fomento de la chacra amazónica está sentada en las organizaciones de productores y apoyada desde las instituciones gubernamentales, otras no gubernamentales, cooperación internacional, etcétera, etcétera, los cuales están conformando la Mesa Chacra, que es el espacio interinstitucional para la gobernanza local. Entonces, este es uno de los procesos, como decía hace un momento, considerado como un sistema importante de patrimonio agrícola mundial. También, también compartirles que dentro de todo este proceso, nosotros habíamos creído conveniente que todo este proceso en el que habíamos trabajado dentro del sello chakra, ¿sí? Del sello chakra, perdón, me regreso a esta lámina, ¿sí? Para que los clientes sepan que al comprar este producto están ayudando, como les decía, a las familias de bajos recursos económicos también. También contarles que las chagramamas son las mujeres que se encuentran en la chacra, ¿sí? Que cuidan de las semillas, de la siembra, también cuidan durante su cosecha, y la chacra es más que una huerta, es un espacio de transmisión y expresión cultural. Ahí pueden ver las diferentes nacionalidades que tenemos acá en la Amazonía, específicamente acá en Ecuador, en el último cuadro donde está el rostro de una mamita que se le ve muy, muy de cerca, que utiliza, ejemplo, una corona con plumas. Esto para nosotros es muy importante poder conservarla, ya que significa el respeto y sobre todo seguir un estricto cumplimiento antes, durante y después de estar en la chacra, para que los productos al final del día sean de calidad.
Gracias. Estamos casi terminando.
Muchas gracias. Yopaychani.
Sí, gracias, Rita. This was very interesting because this combined both the questions related to indigenous people, but also the basket of different products and branding them as a solution to attract different kinds of markets. Now I would like to invite Victoria Adongo, who is from Ghana, and she will describe what are the advocacy campaigns on COVID-19. Could I invite you, Rita, to take the floor? Sorry, Victoria.
Thank you very much. It's still good morning here, and thank you for the opportunity. I'll just go through it very fast, and then if there's any problem, you can let me know. Solutions for resilient responses from forest and farm producer organizations to COVID-19. The insights from the, insight from the Ghana Federation of Forest and Farm Producers in West Africa. Hey, why am I losing this?
Is everything all right?
What is this? Oh, so sorry for the hitch. So GAFAP, in short. GAFAP is a national federation for forest farm producer organizations drawn from 3 ecological zones: the Savannah Transition and Forest Ecological Zones, for promoting the interests of forests and farm producers in Ghana. The evolution of GAFAP has largely been influenced by the support of the Forest Farm Facility to member organizations. GAFAP membership is open to all forest and farm producer organizations in Ghana. They share the objectives of the Federation, and GAFA's current membership stands at 12 forest farm producer organizations, a membership of 167 over. Women are 44%, men 56%, and youth 20%. And within the context of the COVID-19, what happened? Because the forest farm producers are largely smallholder farmers with very small plots of land to cultivate food within the forest ecological zone. So what happened within the context of the COVID-19? The government announced various HIO protocols and restrictions to contain the pandemic. Social distancing, closure of academic institutions, closure of religious institutions, restrictions on hospitality, restrictions on hospitality industry, movement was restricted, markets were closed, and others even had to run ships. Transportation was terribly interrupted. The impact of all this activity meant one, food insecurity, subject to supply chain interruptions. The national lockdowns presented a challenge to food availability and accessibility to both the rural and urban communities. There was rapid democratic change in rural communities. Rapid urban-rural migration, casting stress on resources available in the food security and family livelihoods in the rural area. Damage to biodiversity and ecosystems. Producers started resorting to negative coping strategies, such as selling their small access, deforestation, illegal cutting of economic trees for livelihoods. There was an upsurge of poverty levels and well-being reduction. Many GAFAP members were economically unstable to cope with the current disruption due to restrictions, due to mobility and closure of markets. What was the burden on women?
Thank you, Victoria. Can you
What
up a bit?
Work burden increases in terms of cooking and care for children, as most households had children and had to deal with them. How is GAFAP So how was GAFAP acting to try to mitigate some of these effects on the FFPOs? So the GAFAP, what we tried to do, first of all, in response to the pandemic, was to improve coordination between partners, support forest and farm producers product to aggregate scheme that through coordinated production and marketing, such as shea, baobab, pakia, maize, use, and rice. What we're trying to do is to try to aggregate, support them to aggregate this and get marketing for them. GAFAP leads in essential information sharing. We try to sensitize extension officers because at that time there was so much panic, and it put the farmer producers almost off gear. So we needed to work with the extension officers to sensitize them and educate them to transfer that knowledge to the farmers, because since they are the extension agents. Now we try to link up with other social protection programs like Government of Ghana through its relevant agencies, such as the Department of Social Welfare, Community Development, National Disaster, COVID-19 Fund, Coronavirus Alleviation Program, and to the benefit of GAFAP members, especially the women. We undertook some other advocacy activities. These are the links to the activities that we undertook to ensure that government included the mitigation strategies into the policy documents that are supposed to be coming out. So we undertook these advocacy activities, and you can see the links here. What was government's response to our advocacy activities? What we were demanding, first of all, was the creation of an emergency fund, improving storage facilities to store excess produce, develop tailor-made farmer educational jingles on COVID-19, equip farmers and extension officers with PPE masks. Building blocks for a better future. GAFA plans to generate rural employment opportunities while stimulating livelihood diversification for more resilience, institutionalizing alternative livelihood programs to give livelihood options to rural households, especially women. GAFAP is working on widening our scope and increasing our grassroots presence, collecting action for members' product aggregation and distribution to supply chain destination programs, advocating for rural stimulus facility to enhance rural production and livelihood for the rural poor. GAFAP, through an international dialogue series, will assess and improve agricultural policies regarding the strengthening of FFPOs and building an inclusive community. Through GAFAP's Women Champion Wing, we seek to scale up initiatives and work on enhancing gender equality, and women's economic empowerment. In conclusion, with our advocacy and all the activities that took place, MOFA, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, through their policy department, has invited the Peasant Farmers Association, which is the lead organization, the GAFAP, to make input for further recommendations into the policy document on COVID-19 and after. The government is coming up with a very big strategic document as to how to deal with agriculture and ensure food security during and post COVID-19. Together, resilient farmers are the basis of a resilient food system. Forest and farm producers and their organizations are indispensable part of the brighter future.
Thank you, Victoria. And
Yes.
it seems now that one of the themes that was discussed in the previous session, the unequal access to digital services, is something that has hit us here. And we don't have the Nepalese panelists on board. So I would like to open now the session for questions and answers.
Okay.
We have the questions and answers list box here, and I see that there are several comments and questions there. What we are trying to do is to filter some of the most focused ones. This is not to discriminate the others. There is one question, and this is more on the indigenous people. So this is more to Rita. I read this in Spanish because it's easier. Rita, this is for you. So, Rolando Rubén Nina Vargas pregunta, ¿cómo abordar de manera armónica las respuestas multinacionales en contextos de propiedad colectiva de los bosques con prácticas agrícolas familiares, como es el caso de los pueblos indígenas? Rita, did you get the question?
¿Podría repetir la pregunta, por favor? No se la escuchó bien.
¿Cómo abordar de manera armónica las respuestas multinacionales en contextos de propiedad colectiva de los bosques con prácticas agrícolas familiares, como con los pueblos indígenas?
Bueno, a ver, quiero adicionalmente acotar algo ahí antes de ir acá, porque todo...
Because everything is really in sequence. The basic foodstuffs of the chakra system, like cocoa and yucca, have been produced even during the pandemic, and this has guaranteed food security and consumption, which has served as prevention of the pandemic. And everything that I have mentioned to you is found within the reservation that we belong to. And so this has actually allowed us to take care of our space effectively. And that is why the production system was used according to the chakra principle. So both we did have the contribution of several institutions that are promoting the conservation of Pachamama, but also the provincial government was on board and is pursuing one main goal, which is that everything is produced 100% according to natural methods, and everything has to be retained and conserved in the place where we live.
Now I have a question related to Victoria. You already mentioned that the government is drafting a bigger program. There was a question, I'm not sure from whom, but they wanted to understand how well the governments are taking on board the FFPOs into drafting new programs and responses to COVID-19. Could you please elaborate on that, Victoria?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see if I got you right. You know, there was a very panicky reaction when this pandemic broke out. There was all kinds of fear and other things, and it didn't leave the farmers alone. In fact, food security was one of the biggest problems that government had to tackle immediately. You know, so the government came out to say that they were taking all kinds of measures to ensure that there was food flowing back and forth. But it didn't happen like that. These lockdowns and all this transportation affected the movement of food. So the government tried to come up with a strategy. Now, what often happens, most of the times, especially with the GAFAP, especially with peasant farmers as a leader of GAFAP, the government always tries to invite us to meetings and hear what we think, our opinions. And in one of the, I started a video.
Excuse me, Victoria?
You want me to start a video?
No, please.
Okay. So what happens is that when in one of the meetings, we already met government in one of the meetings to come up with the strategies. And some of the things that we were asking, apart from the social protection, and then, there is a stimulus package that government is giving out to other organizations. In the case of FFPOs, we are not entirely fall within the criteria. So one of the things that we are asking government to do now is to customize or cut out a special package that will fall within the farmer's capacity to be able to qualify for this stimulus package. So those are some of the things that if I got your question right.
Yes, I think it was very good. And this is actually what was discussed a lot in our webinar of 2 weeks ago, that farmers would like to have special envelopes of finance, that they are easily excluded from other finance types. It seems now that we have our Nepalese panelists, the Secretary General of the Ministry for Forests and Environment of Nepal. Could I ask you, Mr. Orley, to make your presentation now? Mr. Orley?
Yeah.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Maybe still on mute.
No, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
So are you seeing my slides?
No, but we see you.
So how about my slides?
I asked somebody to share them.
Oh.
Mr. Orley, I'm showing now the slides. So
Yeah.
please start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was really confused about the system. So for the next few minutes, I will talk briefly on how we can utilize the returned migrant workers from abroad to the productive sector, especially in forestry sector of Nepal. So next slide, please. So regarding background, our economy is basically relies on natural resources, agriculture and tourism, and one of them is forestry. But having more than 45% of land cover uh, by forest, than 2% contribution to the total GDP. And Nepal has successful examples of community-based forest management. We have more than 30,000 community forest user groups in Nepal. And we are working closely with such forest and farm producer organization since a long time. Next slide, please. Regarding the current scenario, the COVID-19 pandemic has different impacts, including the decline in per capita income in Nepal as well. And according to estimates from World Bank, the economy of Nepal will be decreased to 1.5 to 2.8% in 2020. And we have estimates that nearly 1.2 million Nepali migrant workers are expected to return home. That is, excluding the migrant workers from India, there is estimate of around 700,000 from India. Next, please. Next slide, please. Can you hear me? Next slide, please. Yeah. Oh, sorry. The migrant returnee has increased the rate of underemployment, and government plans to create additional 30,000 jobs in forestry sector, including forest-based enterprises, agroforestry, nursery and plantation, and medicinal plant production and processing for coming fiscal year 2021. Similarly, Poverty Alleviation Fund of Government of Nepal has planned to create additional 150,000 jobs in agriculture and micro and small industries. And we can utilize the Apex Forest Farm Producer Organizations to utilize such returning young migrant workers in those sectors. Next slide, please. We have identified potential programs in green sectors, that is sustainable forest management to increase production of wood and non-wood forest products, and then promotion of agroforestry and private forestry on lands, then cultivation and production and processing of medicinal and aromatic plants, and also promotion of nature-based tourism in and around protected areas. Also, we are planning to create opportunities of incentives for establishing forest-based enterprises. Next slide, please. How we can create opportunities in green sector is that the government, in collaboration with forest and farm producer organization and private sector, to utilize such migrant returnees. And we can develop a task force that is of multi-sectoral nature. That forum can identify need and interest of young migrant workers, and also we can design the capacity development programs and also establish the matching grant for identifying suitable jobs and enterprises so that the returning migrant workers can be engaged in such businesses. Next slide, please. Local institutions like community forest user groups can be one of the platform that can provide the skill development programs and access to finances to such individuals. And also we have 73 units of local governments in place. Those local governments, in collaboration with such organizations, can increase access of migrant returnee to different sectors like economic opportunities, land, access to credit, like those. Next slide, please. This is the short snapshot of how we can utilize the migrant workers that is expected to return to Nepal after staying abroad for a long time. And we are planning from the forest and environment sector to utilize such workers in incoming fiscal year. Thank you very much for listening me.
Thank you, Mr. Oli, and thank you for your flexibility, for jumping in when we got you on board. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask a question from you. You already mentioned the matching grants. Do you think that that is sufficient as a financial tool to get the migrant workers to new businesses? And do you think that they have enough information on those possibilities?
Actually, we have developed one procedures how we can utilize such migrant workers in forest-based enterprises. Actually, that procedure highlights that we can provide them 50% matching grant out of the total cost of the enterprises. So that could be establishing nursery, establishing small and medium-sized enterprises based on forestry, non-timber forest products, promotion of agroforestry, like that. So, and also in collaboration with Technical and Vocational Education Institute and the Poverty Elevation Fund, and there is Prime Minister Employment Special Program. So we are working closely how can utilize those workers in green sectors through our ministry.
Thank you. It seems that the Nepalese government is really reaching out and taking the migrants, returning migrants, not as a burden, but also as an opportunity. And this is actually what we have been discussing a lot with COVID-19 as well. It's a moment for transformative change. I'd like to ask now Esther Penonia to elaborate a bit more about this transformation, also from the point of view of gender balance.
Yes, thank you, Tina. So transformation in agriculture is like a way of building back better. So it's basically unleashing the potentials of family farmers in the work for really doing more climate resilient, sustainable, agroecological, integrated, diversified farming in farms and forests, and being more involved, strongly involved in sustainable value chains, because farmers are not only producers, but they are consumers, and they can process, and they can market, and they can distribute their products, especially if they have economies of scale. So it is very good if the farmers are organized and federated into organizations and cooperatives. And of course, we know that there is still gender inequality. There is the women farmers are more vulnerable. They have less access to opportunities. They have less access and control over many of the resources. And so another transformation in agriculture should be empowering these women and creating opportunities and creating spaces for them to organize and then to do solutions by themselves, and then be able to partner with their male counterparts and with government to really pursue policy changes and implementation of programs that will benefit them and that will empower them and that will really give them economic and political empowerment.
Thank you, Esther. I see there are lots of interesting questions. I have myself a couple of questions, but I think that we're ending with our time. I'd like now to give the floor to Jeff Campbell, who's the manager of Forest and Farm Facility, to close this session. I believe that we need to continue the debate later, and I'm sure that there will be other webinars to allow us to do so. But please, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much to all of you. I think we can see how incredibly interesting this topic is, and we need much more time. I want to thank Hiroto for his overview, reminding us of the complex impacts of these effects and not playing down the seriousness of these impacts. These are serious impacts around the world. But also to the fact that producer organizations are developing their own solutions.
Yeah.
Duncan, thank you so much for helping us understand how resilience is truly multidimensional. And I think this gave us an important understanding. What Duncan wasn't able to highlight, but I saw on his slides, is that this begins at the individual level and then moves to the group and the systems level. Esther, we appreciate your sharing the rich results of the earlier consultations and see the value of this ongoing sharing. Thank you, Senora Rita, the Prefecta of Napo region in Ecuador, for showing how governments can really work with ancestral territorial management systems to provide food security, but also develop strategies for marketing which reinforce resilience, which depend on collective branding and on using the diversity of products and knowledge. And the leadership of women, it's very inspiring. Victoria, a wonderful example from Ghana, showing both the real impacts, but also the role of an organization functioning at multiple levels, which can quickly mobilize a range of different approaches, which include things that many people didn't realize were so important, like information sharing with members, like connecting them to social services, etc., which go beyond the market and livelihood side. Mr. Oli's presentation shows us the scale, a little bit of what we're dealing with, 1.7 million migrants, but also the government's quite ambitious program to develop 185,000 jobs, to give matching grants for enterprises, and building back greener. What it made me think of is that crises can be a launching pad to change and to actually addressing some systemic problems which needed to be addressed in any case, but this is, in a way, gives an excuse or a reason to really mobilize those efforts. And I think that for me, really, the takeaway, as always, is we have to get organized. We have to understand the risks of these impacts. We have to develop contingency plans and solutions, both for quick responses, but also for longer-term vision. And we can build on traditional knowledge and new and innovative solutions. And we need to understand that the impacts are different for women, they're different for indigenous peoples, they're different for different groups, and they need different solutions. So thanks to our chair, Tina, thanks to all the panelists, for our whole team for organizing this, and thanks especially to governments, to producer organizations, to smallholders and other organizations around the world who are trying to find solutions that will, I think, be important for us going forward, not only for COVID, but also for climate resilience and other crises. Let's build a better future together. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. Now it's time to close for the next session. Thank you for keeping the time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.